privacy?
In your system, know where you got it and why you have it.
Ah, that's very, very good advice. Greg, do the opposite for me. Give me some bad advice on dealing with privacy.
Share as much as your data as possible anywhere you possibly can. Click all those buttons. Why not?
Why not? All right, this is going to be a tough one, Matt. Give me some worse advice.
Make privacy compliance your number one business priority.
Ooh, that is a good one. All right, let's begin.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Hacking U.S. Data Privacy, an hour of critical thinking on dealing with ever-changing patchwork of regulations. I know we didn't put a period between the U.S. It looks like hacking us data privacy, but it is U.S. data privacy. Our guest today, who you just met them, that would be Greg McCord. He's the CISO over at Lifecast, and also Matt Cooper, who is a senior manager of privacy, risk, and compliance over at Vanta. Guess what? Vanta, they're our awesome sponsor for today's episode. Thank you, Vanta. In fact, they sponsored our last one. Guess what? They're going to sponsor our next one, too. And you might recognize the person who's going to be there the next time as well. Hey, lots of great, wonderful ways to participate today. You know them well, but let me just isolate the fact that our bad idea is how not to approach data privacy in the U.S. You can also answer it, how not to approach data privacy in general. So we want your bad ideas on that. And but tips to succeed with U.S. data privacy as well. Also, you know what? We haven't had this person say, bring me on. So if you'd like to say, bring me on and ask a question or make a comment, please do exactly that. Our discussion today, we'll have our good advice. We'll do our bad ideas. We'll do our 10% tips. We'll play the public interest. We'll play Department of Yes. There are no polls solely because, although we'll have a poll at the end very briefly, a very simple one, but solely because the polling feature on Crowdcast has become a giant mess. And God willing, they're going to fix it soon, and we'll start playing polls soon. Very last thing I do want to mention is our next show will be the week after Thanksgiving. We're not going to have a show the Friday after Thanksgiving because that'll be the most popular shopping day of the year. And we're expecting lots and lots of gifts. So go out, buy gifts for the CISO series on the Friday after Thanksgiving. But the next Friday, come back and join us for Hacking Trust Management. Actually, that'll also be sponsored by Vanta. It's an hour of critical thinking on how to prove you're the company others want to work with. And guess what? You can register for that by clicking that big aqua button at the bottom of the screen. And the wonderful thing about it is you can click that button. You can register for the one in 2 weeks and not be out of this at all. You'll still be in this discussion, but you'll still be able to register for next week. And I don't have to remind you again. If for some reason you forget, you can always go to CISO Series. It'll be there at the top of the screen, or you can go to our events page. I've said it all. It's now time to start the show. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. All right. So I'm going to start with you, Matt. Let's just set the stage here. What are the general principles of data privacy, and how does this differ from, I guess, legal requirements about privacy? Let's just set the stage. Why are we having this discussion?
Sure. So principles, I would say, are you need to let people know why you're collecting their data, what you're collecting, what you're doing with it, who you're sharing it with. And then you basically need to give them control of that data if they want to be deleted, forgotten, corrected, ported out of your system, etc. Legal requirements get into a lot of nit details, so I'll leave it there and let Greg fill in the blanks.
Yeah, so legally is kind of the liability, right? So who really owns the data? What can an organization do with the data, right? If you're talking about, domestically in the United States, like it's really a per state by state basis. There's some federal regulation there, but it's not really enforced. And that's mainly for federal agencies and not really for individuals. And then you have, anything international where we're seeing a lot more regulations there. So you start getting into standard contractual clauses, which, maybe something we can talk about later. I don't know if I want to. I already lost all my hair. That's gone. That's a long conversation. So,
all right. Oh, by the way, questions are also coming in. Thank you. Please get your questions. And, by the way, you can also vote your questions. You're like, oh, please answer this one. But here's the thing I want to talk about. And I've addressed this before. It is bizarre how much privacy is becoming an issue now. And honestly, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago, or let's say 5+ years ago, barely was on the radar. Why is it such a big issue now? And it just, it's like, it's not that we didn't have privacy all the time. Why is it all of a sudden, as of just a few years ago, it's become a big issue now, Matt?
Okay, I'll go 2 answers here. GDPR
Yes,
and
definitely push it. Europe pushed us.
AI. We're seeing where this is going, and we're now a little bit concerned.
Mhm.
Right. And the fact that I remember when GDPR first dropped, it was like, is this thing going to have teeth? And man, it does have teeth. We saw fines.
Mhm.
Well, on the flip side, I think, as Americans, we're like, hey, I want some rights like that. That actually seems good for me as a consumer. What about us?
Greg, how has this become on your radar?
For us, it's especially at an organization level, we see several requests come in, usually on a daily basis, even for a smaller organization like ourselves. And there's a lot of processing and work that we have to do behind the scenes to fulfill those requests. We believe in it, but now we're seeing a really odd turn in which we're seeing organizations that act on the behalf of a potential requester submitting requests. So now we're getting flooded, right? Several hundred requests to look for, this supposed data. And, with EU, you have to verify that identity, right? So how do we do that? So you got 100 requests, you maybe have a couple people in the back end, especially for a smaller org that wants to do business in the EU. How do you do it, right? It could be overwhelming. So now with the advent of AI, or I want to say advent, it's been around for a minute. Now the more leverage of AI, we're seeing, this start to increase exponentially. So for a CISO, sure, we have tons of risks. We're always trying to, bring down, all these vulnerabilities, and now we got to add some privacy stuff to it. So why not? The team has it grown.
So here's one thing I want to throw out, and I saw this a while ago at the Dreamforce conference, and also there's a big conference called Social Media Marketing World that's coming up here in San Diego very soon. My main concern is the people collecting this data have zero incentive to develop any privacy whatsoever. In fact, the ones that are collecting it are marketed to collect more and more and more because you get more and more insights and hold on to it as much as possible. And this is in direct conflict. Well, here's the thing. Because privacy become a big issue, it's now becoming direct conflict with the business, although it is also of interest to the business. So like the business has got 2 concerns. Yes, I do want all this data. I do want all these insights on these people because I do want to market them more. I do want to sell them, but it's creating new liability to me that I didn't know I had before, because of GDPR and new laws. So what are we going to do that the ones that are collecting it have no incentive, and I mean zero incentive, to be doing what we're trying to do to maintain privacy, Matt?
I mean, I think what we're trying to do is create a legal incentive, create a regulation that forces them to care about the appropriate handling of our data. That's, moving faster in certain places than others.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, that's right. But that message is not getting to, and here's the thing. I spoke with the organizer of this event that's going to be happening in San Diego. And I mentioned, I said, I go, just so you know, I mean, like, this is a big issue. Like, you should consider having a session about this at your event. At the Dreamforce conference, first of all, just in security in general, was this tiny there. And privacy, zero. Absolutely zero. That's the issue. This message isn't getting through. What do we need to do, Greg?
Well, if we think about security controls, right, privacy is the what, security is kind of the how. I think if we make it more kind of behind the scenes, these controls in place and automated mechanisms, we talked about AI already, right? Well, let's use it for good too, and make a lot of these things automatic. The contracts, the legality, the liability, those will be there. They're kind of there now, right? And if we can leverage a program like security to implement controls and make it easier, why not? We already know in privacy data elements, the term data elements. Let's find those data elements. Let's get a network diagram because I know those are hard to get. And then, put some of those controls in place.
By the two things I want to spotlight right here, Michael Swinarski said personal data has become a business. I think that's kind of an interesting way of taking it, is that if we just say this is a division, this is a business in itself, that you have to respect it for that, because I don't think anyone saw it that way before. Good point. And also, I just noticed that your colleague, Kim Elias, who was on the last time we did this, has a great bad idea. Ensure your privacy policy is the length of the dictionary with all the legal terms, so no one can ever understand what you're doing with data, even if they do read it. Great tip.
David, before we move on, I one kind of follow on to like why don't people care? I'm interested in Greg's take. I don't feel like this is really a big issue in American popular culture. We're looking into a new election. I don't hear people worried about privacy. There's a lot of other issues. And so I think the awareness is lower and the concern has historically been lower, which is why we have no federal law.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too. We only have a few people that are worried about it, that are concerned about it, like security folks, legal folks. And it's the same thing with risks in most organizations, in some organizations, I won't say most, where we're always dying on the vine for whatever that risk is, right? Oh, we won't be breached. It'll never happen to us. There'll be no privacy violations. It's gonna take a few of those things before we actually see some good traction on that.
By the way, Mauricio has a pretty strong good idea, which I don't know. I would argue this might be a bad idea, Mauricio. Data collectors, advertisers thrown in jail with no bail. Monetizing data should be a crime. He's got a big grin there too, as well. But here's the thing. Here's my feeling, and maybe either one of you has a story about this. I think the reason people don't yell, "I want my privacy," is they don't understand how the dots are connected, because it's really complex and confusing. Connect the dots for me, either one of you, of why I should care about privacy. Give me a dot connection. Give me a good example.
Okay, I'll start. Is okay? Okay. I think it's like the harm thing. People get a lot of ads. Hey, we're American. We're used to that. Also, we're entrepreneurial, so we think of ourselves. We put ourselves in the point of view of the business. We might want to build our own company. We know we're going to need to advertise that, so it's just a part of commerce. We have a lot of tolerance. One thing that I think actually did move the needle. I know we're going to get a little spicy here, but with certain states limiting healthcare options for women in particular, and then the cases that showed where technology companies shared data about what people were, say, searching for online, and then that resulted in a legal consequence for that person that a lot of folks disagree with. I think that harm really, set off alarm bells for certain people to say, hey, that is not acceptable, and we need to do something about it.
Jason Martang also pointed out and I agree 100% with this. The "I have nothing to hide" mindset is a very dangerous, because it's not that you have nothing to hide, is that your information will be used against you. That, I think, is what is the real critical thing is, and those dots are really tough to connect. I remember interviewing a hacker a few years ago. I go, and he said, "Oh, I've been doing this for like 15 years." And I go, "What's the difference between when you started and today?" And he said, "The big difference is how much more I know about you today is extraordinary." It is, and that's, and a lot of this is very voluntary, that we voluntarily put this information online. And I will throw this out, which I don't think is realistic, is one of the pieces of advice that I saw was like, and I was reading this thing about green people that start a job are often targets from phishers to give up information because they're new, they haven't been trained on the security protocols, and they want to prove themselves. So they're often, because and they say, well, don't announce you got a new job on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's not realistic. People love announcing they've got a new job. So what are the balances we have here? Either one of you jump out, and then we'll play our first game.
Sure, I'll jump on this one. So it really depends on the person and who their audience is. I know from personal experience, my work history, there are certain things I just simply won't share. Like you barely see me on Facebook. In fact, I still have it, right? I just know I shouldn't share lots of information because I share that's out in the world. I no longer have control. My duties at work, it's a little bit different. I know not to share anything at all because anything can and will be used against you in a court of law. Even though I'm trying to prove myself, there's so much I want to say, but I know confidentiality-wise, I just can't. So, is there kind of a bleed over from work to personal to work? Yes, and it's hard to see that balance sometimes because we do want to share. Where people are social people, and that'll be taken advantage of on a daily basis.
Welcome, Bob. All right. Matt, hold your thought. We're gonna jump into, I think, our first game here. So here.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
All right. I did not create this game. I do not know what any of the answers are whatsoever. So I'm going to play along as well. This is all new to me. I haven't seen it. Gentlemen, here you go. There are only 4 questions here, and I have said this multiple times. Getting 4 out of 4 is extraordinarily difficult, although it looks simple. It's very tough. Audience, play along as well. Here we go. First one. Ooh, most average monthly search queries opt in or opt out. I'm going to say opt in. I don't know.
Let me go opt out on this one just to go against you.
Okay. Matt, where are you?
I'll go opt out.
Opt out. All right. I'm opt in. You're opt out. And the correct answer is, oh, I lose. You were right. I am shocked by that one. All right. Querying them. I guess it's like, how do I opt out of it? That must be what people query. All right.
Find it on the website.
You got 1 point. I have 0. All right. Next one. CCPA or GDPR? Oh, I'm not going to answer this, but I am pretty confident I know.
Is this global searches?
Yes, it's all global searches. Yes.
I'm going to go GDPR.
GDPR.
I'm going to be with you too. GDPR. I'm with you. Oh my God, that's a shocker.
Burner.
That's like almost 10 to 1.
Global.
There. Holy moly.
Interesting.
It's newer. Maybe it's newer.
I think, because it's current. Who's searching GDPR today? Good point. This isn't, it's like, essentially we do this month. So it's what people are searching today. Yeah. Nobody's searching GDPR.
I had a lot in the chat too. There's a lot picking D in there too. So yeah, shocker.
Yeah. All right. This one. So I am 0 for 2. You guys are each have 1. All right. Most average monthly search queries for data breach, privacy policy, or credit monitoring. I know where I'm going to go, but Greg, Matt, where are you going?
Let me go credit monitoring.
I'm going to take that too.
Yeah.
I'm going to go there too.
I want to go credit. That was my first response, but I'm now thinking data breach.
I was thinking that one too.
Yeah, that's the other one. Not privacy policy.
All right, I'm going data breach. Both of you going credit monitoring?
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we got. Oh, wow.
And privacy policy.
Wow.
Hi, on data breach and privacy policy. All right. 1 and 1 for each of us. This might be the deciding factor. Let's see. COPPA or FERPA. All right, I know which way I'm going. Which way are you going, Greg?
I'll go COPPA.
I'm going COPPA too.
Yeah, I'll go COPPA.
Okay, we're all going to win or lose on this one. Here we go. Oh, my God. We blew it again.
Bizarre.
We got 1. That's pathetic.
We got a lot more work to do on privacy.
That's right.
All right. Well, oh, my God. The crowd has, first of all, I will be stunned if anyone got 4 out of 4 on this one. Because this one, first of all, Mike Phillips got
Mike
4 out of 4. Kudos to Mike. Way to go. I got to shut this down. Here we go. All right, back to the content of the show. I'm impressed with Mike getting, because that I'm going to go so far as to say that he's got to be the toughest and threw me for a loop on those. And by the way, I'm enjoying the fact I get to play along now too. Huge kudos to Rich Straffolino. That was actually quite a good one that you created, Rich. So good job on that game there. Lots of bad ideas coming in. Remember, by the way, tip to everybody who's playing the best bad idea. And our last winner was John Arrett. I don't know if John's here, but hopefully he is. He came up with the best bad idea. We haven't had him as a winner, and he won the awesome CISO Series jacket, which, by the way, is the only way you can win a CISO Series jacket now. So come up with a clever bad idea, and you could win an awesome CISO Series jacket. And I saw that your Kim came out. By the way, I don't pick the winner. I have a team of CISOs after the show who pick the winner. So we announce it we'll announce it actually the week after Thanksgiving is when we'll announce it. All right, let's get back to the show. You know what? There's a ton of questions here that I have not gone to. So let's look at them. All right. This is the obvious, because we're talking about U.S. data privacy, and I'm going to throw this one to you, Matt. And maybe the answer is what you're doing over Vanta. So please, if it's what you're doing at Vanta, tell us the story.
Great.
But James Sparenberg said, how are people handling the cacophony of privacy laws as several different states adopt variants of GDPR? Like, obviously, you're kind of, the classic is lowest common denominator, but really what you're doing is going for highest common denominator, or not the highest common denominator, just the highest thing. Actually, quite the opposite, actually. Whoever has the highest, strictest thing, you kind of have to go for that, right? Not the lowest common denominator. Quite the opposite. Yes?
Yeah, I think that's generally fair. The way my high level answer there is you need to zoom out. You'll die in the nits, the differences, and trying to track all of that. And I think you need to take a more principles approach. If you look at something like CCPA, it's something of an outlier. It's kind of a different thing. But if you look at the other state laws, they're much more similar than different, in my opinion. And the concepts are the same. The overall idea is the same. One of the major differences I would say would be the risk with respect to private right of action. But that's just about the risk, so the controls you're going to put in place are the same. So yeah, TLDR is just zoom out a little bit, think of the principles, and adhere to the most reasonable highest common denominator. We can break that down a bit later.
Oh, let me pause you. Is this something Vanta's doing in that you've got your eyes on all of these and you are essentially providing the advice? Because here, let me just point out, I use a payroll service that helps me deal with taxes and different laws. You know what I don't want to do is know about tax laws in multiple states.
Completely.
And that's why I pay this service to know that, so I don't have to worry about it. Is this something that you're offering to your customers?
This is exactly what we're doing. And, Greg will know this well. It's the same problem in cybersecurity. Well, I'm going to comply with SOC 2. I'm going to comply with ISO. I'm going to comply with, high trust, HIPAA, what have you. It's all variations on a theme. It's much the same thing. And instead of having, 5 different control sets or, 7, 8 different sets of laws, we look at ways to harmonize those where they're effectively the same and make sure we're, adhering to the highest bar.
Greg, how are you handling with the multitude of issues going on across states and countries?
Yeah, I mean, at first, I kind of approach it the same way I do with security. Is kind of linear. I kind of focus on what the highest common denominator is, right? Security, we're going for ISO 27001, so I take a look at the number of controls, and then I actually take the step back and I say, okay, well, which companies are we going to operate in, right? Southeast Asia, we got Europe, we've got stuff all over the place, but which law is important to us as an organization? I almost said me, but which law is important to us as an organization? And if I have a GRC platform there with me, I can maybe pull those into it and have the crosswalk done. So going back to your example, David, like the platform's there, it's helping me leverage that. The crosswalk is there. You have the same set of controls across all of them. And you kind of know what to do to build a roadmap to apply those controls. Some of them aren't easy, like all the contractual stuff. Like, what do I need to know there? That's a collaborative effort with your legal department, right? Or an outside legal entity. So there is kind of this forest to navigate, but once the terminology is there, everyone's aware of kind of the same language and starts to have that conversation internally, it gets a little bit easier. But all it takes is that first step. taking that first step to know what we need to do to approach.
By the way, I want to throw in Dwayne's question here, which, by the way, this is super relevant to something else. So I don't know if anyone remembers the do not call law. So what Dwayne asks here is 11 states have regulations and all 50 states have breach notification rules, but it's a patchwork and a moving target. Do you see any hope of a unified federal privacy law in the U.S.? And I will say there's a precedent for this, Dwayne. There used to be, so there is something called donotcall.gov, which doesn't really work anymore, sadly, which is to stop the robocalls. I don't know if anyone knows, but multiple states used to have robocall laws. And if you violated them, they would fine you. And the states loved these because they made a lot of revenue from these. It was actually quite a revenue. And then the federal government came along, started it, so they could make money from this, and it annoyed all the states for that matter. But it makes sense. Like, this may just run the same pattern as the do not call laws as these regulations. I mean, kind of seems almost like a parallel story here. What do you think, Matt?
It's complicated. So, we've been working on some kind of federal privacy law for 20 odd years. Mm-hmm. And, it's like devil's in the details. Everyone agrees, oh yeah, we should have a privacy law, but we cannot agree on, well, what should that privacy law be? And so there's these sticking points. Preemption, can California do more than everyone else, than Delaware? Private right of action, huge sticking points. Business wants one thing. They want a consistent standard they feel is reasonable and doable. And, privacy advocates or consumer advocates want a toothy system that will be enforced, that maybe doesn't rely on attorney generals. And so it makes it hard. And then you add to that, the way that Congress is currently functioning, where we're basically focused on, funding the government in 2-week sprints now. That seems to be, taking all the air out of the room. I don't know. I just saw a webinar earlier this week, a few experts talking, and they were all pretty skeptical. The one place where I see hope is AI forcing this issue. Because of the very, very significant impacts of AI, we cannot effectively regulate that technology without some sort of privacy baseline to protect people underneath. And I think that actually may be the thing that finally forces, Congress to come together and do a federal law.
We've been having, really good points you brought up. Greg, have you been following any of this? Do you have any insight on this yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming up to the same conclusions, right? I mean, I've seen this go around and around for a while now, and it's not going anywhere. You'll find a state that has something out there, and you think, okay, well, now it's going to propagate to the rest of the states, and it's just not happening. You'll get a couple states at a time, and then it just it dies. But my thought was, going back to Matt's AI comment, it's going to take something big that forces the country to move. It's not the top topic. It's not the priority, even though the citizens think it is. It's just not. So it's going to have to take something big, like AI or a massive breach of something or other, or infrastructure gets taken down. So
it'll have to be some gross misuse of people's privacy that really hits home. For people to actually care, because when it's vague and people don't understand the hurt and they don't see it, there's no immediate pain, and that's
okay. Another take on that, David. I kind of agree with that, but also I think probably historically business was more skeptical of more regulation, more privacy. It may turn. Actually, industry may start demanding that we put some kind of reasonable law in place so that we can continue to innovate technology and just move forward. And, business, they have the money, they have a lot of influence. And so I think that could also help really push it forward. If the community can come together on the details and, and motivate their representatives to do something about it.
Yeah, I was going to add to that too. Thinking of the recent SEC ruling about CISOs and the responsibility that something else that we have to put on our plates for publicly traded companies. maybe some type of action from an administrative group per se versus actually coming out as a law might get more traction initially to support businesses, right? Or, reduce the impact if something big were to happen, right? That impacts everyone. So we'll probably see more of that, and probably short term versus the long term.
Yeah, very good point. Well, we'll see. Okay, no more questions here. So, excuse me, I take that back. There's a really good one here from Keith, and he actually addresses an issue which I think is the core to solving a lot of problems, and that is good old-fashioned categorization of data. Can data security posture management, DSPM technologies, which leverage AI/ML techniques, help play a crucial role in identifying, classifying, and assessing risks associated with sensitive data and help to lower privacy issues? That or anything. I mean, one of the things we've heard again, once you know what you have, once you can classify it, actually your opening tip here, Matt, everything else can be solved, can't it? Yes?
Sure. Technology is going to be a big part of the solution. He's, talking about data security.
By the way,
posture.
this is Keith Swanson, if I didn't mention.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good question, Keith. But, data security posture management, also privacy enhancing technologies, are going to become a bigger and bigger industry, I think. And it's going to be actually a great economic opportunity for technologists and technology providers to help people protect their privacy or manage their privacy in a digital economy. And help businesses actually be able to do it, because it's, the principles are simple, but it becomes very complex very quickly in your actual environment when you have to find, every instance of your name and your email in every system and then go delete it.
How do you figure out what you have, Greg, in terms of sensitive data?
You got to know what's out there, right? So you got to give something like a platform like this posture management tool or a group of people access to be able to see it. So it's almost like a catch-22, right? I was thinking about it. I don't want to give people access because I want to protect the privacy of that information, and I want to put role-based access controls. I start thinking about security principles, least privilege access, all these types of things. And yet, in order to look at the problem, I have to open it out to see the problem. So in order to find the sensitive information, I have to be able to provide someone or something access to be able to find it. We should, quote unquote, have logic already in place to understand that there is sensitive information there. If we're connecting to another organization, scraping data off the web or whatnot, we should know what we're getting. But how the landscape is today, people accessing anything, pushing the buttons, opening that access, it's hard to tell. So it's a very complex problem, and it's something that we take on a day-to-day basis because there is so much data. So we know the funnel, right? We know kind of what we have, and then those outliers we start to address. But it's a very reactive problem. It's hard to be proactive unless you have those controls in place that you've done for everything else for odd some number of years.
Matt, I want to get to the issue of AI here. And by the way, I think we're very close to playing our Department of Yes game. So if you have not gotten your best bad idea in, please get it in. And also, I haven't mentioned it since the beginning of the show, but there is a wonderful link at the bottom of the screen that would register you for our next event, which will be in 2 weeks. Please click that link. Please register for it. You'll get to see, if you're enjoying Matt right now and you want more Matt, guess what? He'll be joining me in 2 weeks as well. And we all want more Matt. This has actually been our number one request, more Matt Cooper. All right. Oh, I've got some really good bad ideas that have come in right now. So here's the thing with AI. And we had Caleb Sema, who's actually been doing a lot of research on AI. He used to be the CSO over at Robinhood. And there is this sort of general fear of AI. And Lorenzo sort of pointed it out here in the chat room I saw. But Caleb's argument was, yes, there is sensitive data going into AI, but let's seriously think about it, how hard it is to actually extract it. It's not easy. Think what it would take for you to extract your own sensitive data from an AI system. So are we getting all knotted up about AI, or is it really becoming a major privacy issue? What do you think? Matt.
Okay. Well, we are getting knotted up, and we should. It is a major issue. One thing that I think is potentially going to be changed by AI is essentially the way that the internet works today. So right now we put out content, and it's a very good medium for putting out anonymous content, unknown content. And that can be now, rep faked by AI, if you will. And if you look at the most recent presidential order, or executive comment on AI, one of the things the federal government said they're going to do is they're going to start watermarking their content so that oh, this is actually, the president talking and not an AI bot. And they're going to do that as an example for industry and other governments. And, where I'm going with that is I can see a future, where we are all basically signing content when we put it out there as a means to, identify what's real, and to give, this technology a thing to hold on to, a thing to identify the data as it moves through these intensely complex systems. So right now it's kind of impossible, right, to extract, your content. But if your content was, signed, it could facilitate finding it much more easily.
Mm-hmm. How much fear do you have about privacy going into AI, Greg?
A lot. And I say that because of the ease of use today, the ease of use to get to such tooling, and the lack of controls to prevent sensitive information from getting there. And I think part of the problem is, like, what is sensitive information, right? What does a person deem sensitive? Mm-hmm. And then once it's in there, we go back to the problem of, can I get it out? We don't know. It's out now. It's part of the model. It's part of the generative improving this tool or platform. So the most proactive you can do is create internally in an organization, create a policy, right, of allowing said data to get in there. And then if you have the tooling, the capability to have the tooling, prevent it from going in there. But then you run into the same old problems we have with DLP, right? The data loss prevention. A phone number looks like a social security number. So how far do we go, right? So you have to find that balancing act. So I would say it keeps me up at night, but I've had other things that keep me up at night on the security side that are far worse currently than the way privacy is stated.
All right. I think we have a call that just came in.
Hello. Welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right. This is the Department of Yes. We got a lot of bad ideas. And I may go off the board here, Rich, just so you know. I may go off. He sent me a few of his personal favorites. But I'm going to start with one of them. And it comes from Brian Colt. And remember, these are not good ideas. They're bad ideas. But you're playing the Department of Yes. And you must tell me, without being facetious, why you want to deploy this incredibly stupid idea. Okay? Brian Colt, who is a multi-time winner of this Best Bad Idea contest. So he has skill at this. And he does it again here. Pitch in to help reduce the U.S. national debt by allowing the U.S. Pitch in to help reduce the U.S. national debt by allowing the IRS and other government agencies to sell your data to the highest bidder. Matt, why do you want to do this?
Well, the debt affects all of us. And, we have a patriotic duty to support our country. Mm-hmm. And, this seems like a logical way for them to, raise a few dollars, raise some funds. I also want to keep my taxes low. So this would be a good trade-off.
Yes, I'm going to get, I think, a nice offset. Yes! All right. Greg, why do you want to do this?
I agree. I mean, a lot of folks that I work with, they want it now. They want it fast. Giving open access to these organizations helps us get us there. In business, we want to be able to, on a quarter-by-quarter basis, increase revenue. I believe this reduces the red tape to allow us to get to that revenue quicker. And then working with government agencies, I could see my organization building that relationship with them.
Very nice, both of you. All right. Okay, along the same lines as that last one, this comes from Michael Swinarski. And I'll have you answer this one first, Greg. buy everyone credit monitoring, then publish everything. So we get to see all your personal data and Matt's and everybody else's. Let the monitoring deal with it. So essentially, if these credit monitoring reports are as good as they are and can protect us as well, ideally, although that's not their first and foremost responsibility, we wouldn't need anything else, would we, Greg? What do you think?
No, I don't think we would need anything else. Credit monitoring, we trust it. We have we.
All right,
we
by the way, I'm
want
going to give you a. I don't know if you trust it.
I was
Go ahead.
So we trust in those platforms, right? I know that they're going to protect my data whenever and wherever possible. That's why we have it in the first place, right?
I don't know if we know that they're going to do that, but this is how I feel about credit monitoring of my data. Matt, why do you want to do this?
Well, I know that most corporations really have consumers' best interest at heart, and they really just want to do right by everyone anyway. So,
Didn't I tell you not to be facetious?
Adding to what Greg said, we should just trust him to do it. Also, it's too hard. It's too hard for me to do it.
You guys, while you did, I think you did well in the first one. I didn't think you did well in the second one. Good job, regardless. It's a tough one. This was a tough one. I want to say kudos to the bad ideas here. This was not easy. Not easy. By the way, how many good, and again, I give the audience crap about this every single week we do a show. We always have tons more bad ideas than we have good ideas. And it's by multiple fold. I have to ask, back channel, tell me how many, or actually you can put in the public channel, how many good ideas do we have? Because I only saw maybe at most a handful. This is usually what we get. And again, 2! Oh my God. Okay, now I need to abuse the audience for that. Give me the next 5 minutes. Give me some good ideas, because we need to solve this as best as possible. All right, no more questions have come in, so I'm going to go to my own questions for that matter. Let's get to, Matt, let's get more to what Vanta is doing in this respect and how you've been dealing with it and how you've evolved. Because that's what I think, because what you're doing today, I'm sure, is not what you did a year ago. So answer that question is, what has changed today for what Vanta is doing in dealing with privacy with customers as opposed to a year, 2 years ago? What is different today?
Sure. The interest and the amount of regulation that you have to comply with. So when Vanta started, it was about cybersecurity. And so that's the protection of data. But now we're adding appropriate use on top of that. And it's in a lot of ways kind of a harder problem to solve, I would say. And just the slew of regulations means that many more organizations are now focused on complying with privacy. We've been doing cybersecurity for 20 years. A lot of folks, I think, feel that they have more of a handle on that. But the privacy thing is a new problem. So that's definitely getting a lot more focus. And then we're going to go to AI.
Well, I got to assume just because AI is so hot, that's where you're getting the demand, yes?
It's huge. I mean, every organization is adding AI into their own capabilities. You can't not do it, right? The power is incredible. And it's going to, without overstating it, it's going to change our entire civilization and culture. I really feel bullish about that, in the same way that the smartphone did, or the personal computer, or the internet. And so, we have to do it, and we're trying to do it safely, but we're literally figuring it out as we go. And we made this really cool thing. We're like, wow, this is powerful. And now we're like, oh, actually, is this safe? We need to think about this here, and it's a really challenging problem. You think about cybersecurity in that dimension, which is protecting who gets access or what gets access to this thing. That's a lot of it, confidentiality. Now we're trying to regulate machines that have bias, or have discriminate, we haven't even solved that problem on the human to human level, right? And now we're trying to manage machines doing this. So it's just incredibly complex, and also fascinating and powerful. And it's got, I think, the whole collective attention, especially of the technology community, is like very, it's just the hottest hot topic, as you said.
Let me ask you, Greg, I'm going to quote Matt Black here with one of his tips. He says, with his 10% better tip, is just start somewhere. With new systems you bring in, start to track what data is going into them and how it's being used, and work the backlog. I mean, honestly, the answer to this is start something. I mean, you can't be perfect when you begin. So were you involved in the start at Lightcast? And if so, how did you start? And I'm assuming it's evolved. Give us just sort of a basic, brief summary of that.
Yeah, we got an inventory of everything, and we started. It was started with getting the inventory of everything, right? And then we took it a little bit.
Sorry,
different.
can you tell me what everything is? Just give me an idea of what that
I will bring that down. Yes, it's not an inventory of everything. I wish it was. It's an inventory of those connections, right? We have a couple of tools we have in place that we're able to see it. I want to say the name, but I'm not going to, because that's part of my profession, not to disclose that data. So we're able to see those list of connections, and then we risk rank those, right? We use a platform, we use Phantom in this case, to help us out with that, and they have some default rules that are already in there, which is extremely helpful. So we base it on criticality at that point. So we started with critical, and then we worked through the critical list, and then we started to go through the high list, right? So it's continually evolving, because now we're starting to automate that, right? So now something new comes in, back to what Matt was saying. We get the risk rank, and we say, okay, do we need to do analysis yet? Yes or no? No. All right, let's move to the next one, right? Because we're going to get a lot of those connection requests in, and we need to be able to turn that around quickly.
By the way, before you answer, Matt, again, want to remind people to register for the next 2 weeks. That link is going to change very soon. So in 13 minutes, when this is over, the fun does not end, because the show will be over, but we're going to meet up and have face-to-face conversation. As many of you as who can show up, please join us. And that link will change to this other platform we go to called Toucan, which sort of simulates a virtual party. So please, especially those of you who are on live right now, I see a lot of you here. Please join us for that, because that is a ton of fun. And we get to have a chat, and we just chat for about a half hour after the show about this, or heck, anything else you want to talk about for that matter. And both Matt and Greg will be there as well. So please stick around for that. I'll be there too. All right. So Matt, here's what I want you to answer. And actually, your colleague, Kim Elias, said this for the 10% better tip: require companies to undergo a privacy audit from an accredited auditor in order to claim they, quote, have a privacy program. And honestly, isn't what a lot of these regulations are saying? Do you got something in place? And is that what you're seeing? Yes.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I think what Kim is highlighting here is that in cybersecurity now, we don't just take your word for it. You can say, well, I do all these things, and we're like, okay, that's fine. We'd actually rather have an auditor come in and verify that for us, create a report, because that's going to give us a higher level of assurance. In these privacy regulations, that's not how they are today. Basically it's the self-attestation scheme. You could audit, but it's not the industry norm. And people either take your word for it, or the customer spends a bunch of money investigating you themselves, assessing you themselves, and it would provide a higher level of assurance across the industry if we created a third-party audit scheme the way that we do in cybersecurity. I think that makes total sense.
By the way, Michael has a good excuse for not coming to the after party, because he's continuing this conversation with another third party to discuss their privacy issues. So let's just keep the conversation a third party. Oh, by the way, and also Richard mentioned our week review show, which I'm going to mention in just a second. In fact, I'm going to use this time to jump over that. So, by the way, I'm going to give everyone your final warning. That button at the bottom of the screen, do me a favor. Click on that damn button right now to register for 2 weeks, because we're going to change that in just a moment to our link for our after party. But we still have 10 minutes left in the show. But let me just discuss just some final thoughts, and then we're going to get to your final thoughts and a couple more questions. Again, if you got a question, get it in there, because I think we may be able to squeeze one or two more. left in the show. So huge thanks to your company, Matt Vanta, for sponsoring today. Greatly appreciated. You sponsored the last one coming up. Please, thank you very much. They're available at vanta.com. Starting in actually 100 minutes from now, not 90 minutes from now, but that's 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific, we will be doing our show, Cybersecurity Headlines Weekend Review, and our host for that is none other than Richard Straffolino, and his guest will be Jay Wilson, who's a CISO over in Surety. I had him on CISO Series podcast. He was phenomenal. And he's going to be live on that. So we highly recommend joining that. That is actually on YouTube. It is not on this. So again, you go to our events page on CISOseries.com. You can find the link for that. But if you go to youtube.com/CISO Series, you will find it there as well. Stick around for a meetup. Aaron, our producer. Look at that. I said, Aaron, and it magically changed. There it is. That is the link for our after party. You can actually click on it now and start registering to get yourself in it. But immediately in now 9 minutes, we will be there as well. If you want to sponsor a Super Cyber Friday coming up, just email me at david@cisoseries.com. We are sold out for 2023, but guess what? 2024 is wide open. So ping me and we can do it really fun. And that is it for that. So let me hide that. And let's get back to, we have 9 minutes, no questions, but no questions in the audience, but I got plenty of questions as well. I will ask you, Greg, since you have been dealing with this at a great level, what didn't you know about dealing with privacy when you first was dealing with it, and what do you know today?
What didn't I know is how complicated it was going to be. Now, I always framed it in the security mindset. Security, when I first started, was also very complicated, right? So we're starting one path. It was already very complicated. There's a mountain of stuff you got to overcome, and you got to build relationships. It's a lot of work. Taking that experience, and I thought privacy would be better because it's more impactful to an individual than maybe security is, right? But it's not. It's still not. And until that becomes such, it's still going to be a mountain to climb, just like security is. So knowing that today, it's going back to building relationships, right? Within an organization, you got to build the relationships to push those initiatives forward, or there will be no traction. And I think if we're talking about going into a broader perspective, like a federal government or a statewide, entity, it's the same thing, right? Building it, taking what the citizens want, and then building it into something, if they care for it.
Matt, maybe you can answer the same question of what
Sure.
didn't you know when you started it, and what do you know today, or maybe like the biggest misunderstanding when you started too as well.
Yeah, great. Well, first I'll echo what Greg said. When I first started getting into GDPR, I was like, oh, that's it. It seems kind of basic, kind of like, why is this a big deal? Because the concept is simple, but the implementation gets extremely complex and difficult. Seeing how hard it is for businesses, and then the other thing I kind of learned through that process was to say, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. This is how much money it would cost us to actually do that perfectly. Is that worth it? Is that really what we should do? What's going to happen if we don't do it perfectly? I sometimes use a speed limit analogy to say, the speed limit's 55. Do you always drive 55? Do you ever drive 59? You figure, oh, that's pretty close. It's safe enough. The risk is low that I'm going to get pulled over or hurt someone. I'm not going to drive 100 because that would be actually dangerous. And, I probably would get, pulled over. But it's a risk management exercise, and you have to balance compliance with your business goals. This is getting back to my first, bad advice from the beginning of the show. Your whole point of being in business is not to be privacy compliant. If you're privacy compliant, but you can't sell your product or your service, well, what's the point of that, right? So it's a risk management decision.
By the way, I just dropped a link to a book called Broken Code that just got published this week. I had a nice write-up in the New York Times. And actually, one of our listeners actually clued me in on it. I highly recommend it. It is about Facebook and all the abuse they did to privacy themselves. And it is pretty explosive. I just started it. I'll probably read it over the holidays myself. So my recommendation, I'm actually enjoying it. I'm just a little bit into it already. Actually, let me ask you do we have a poll up for the, let's get this out. Geez, we have less than 5 minutes. Please put up the poll up about a warm handoff to the nice people over at Vanta. If you would like a warm handoff to Vanta to talk about privacy issues, which we strongly recommend, please check out that poll here. I think, did we create that? Do we have that poll? I don't know. Hopefully it'll go up. We'll see. Hopefully we'll have it up within the next 60 seconds. We are happy to do that for you. So if that poll doesn't go up, just message us or talk to Matt. He'll be in the chat afterwards. By the way, Matt, what's the best way to get in contact with you if people are interested?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me through Vanta's website. You can chat with me after the show. Happy to talk with you.
All right. We have just 4 minutes left right now. So, Greg, any last thoughts on this topic of conversation? And by the way, if anyone would like to engage with you, maybe there's jobs available at Lightcast. Are there any jobs available or no?
Maybe. Yeah. So the data, I've heard it said 100 times, data is the new oil, right? And now we've got AI manipulating that data, producing different types of data. It's just, there's stuff all over the place. It's good to take like a deep breath, right? So for example, I've been through a couple breaches. The first thing I do is breathe. Stop, breathe, something's happening. We're kind of in that same boat right now. There's so much happening. We need to stop, breathe, and observe. Mm-hmm. And then we've talked about it a number of times already, take the first step. You're never going to solve it if you see it and you push it to the side. You just got to take a step and do something about it. And then you can improve upon that process over time. It doesn't have to keep you up at night. It doesn't have to stress you out, but you can get through it. It just takes time. And then you report on that time if you're an analyst or engineer level, right? You just keep reporting on what you're doing. You're showing your progress, right? And then for us at the CISO level, it's the same thing. We have a percentage metric that we provide over a quarter-by-quarter basis or an annual basis to whoever we're reporting to, a board, a boss, you name it. So as complicated as it is, there are ways to get through it. And we can all get through it together. Yay.
Matt, I'm assuming you help with that pain. How are you going to help with the pain of getting through it?
Yeah, completely. I actually think Greg has a great answer there, which is, zoom out when you're thinking about your strategy and then zoom back in when you're trying to put one foot in front of another, break everything down into very, functional, manageable steps and just work on moving the ball forward.
That's it. All right. Well, here, we'll wrap this up about a minute early or so. Hey, thank you so much, Matt Cooper over at Vanta. Please join us next week. Again, the link has changed, but you can always go to CISOseries.com and register there. Also, I should also mention, if for some reason you can't come to the chat or you have to come late or something, you can also just register for our meetup. There's a link just to go directly to that, which we started. So that's always a possibility. It is there for you as well. And Greg, thank you very much for this discussion. I really love this. This is great. And thank you to our audience. We greatly appreciate how incredibly involved you get into our programming. It's awesome. Thank you so much. I always say that half the show is the chat room. When people say, oh, can I watch it after the fact? You go, yeah, you can, but you're kind of missing half of the show, which is the chat room. So I appreciate you being there. All right. Everybody, do me a favor. Would you click on that darn link at the bottom of the screen? Please click on it. Join us for the meetup afterwards. It's a ton of fun. I would like to chat with you, especially if you're brand new and we haven't seen you. Click on it. Say hello. Engage with the community. Huge thanks to our producers, Aaron, Andrew, and Rich. Thank you for making this happen. Go ahead. Take us out. Click the link at the bottom of the screen. That means you too, Matt and Greg. Bye.